and France is paralysed for a second day as a strike over pension reforms continues.
It's 9:01.
KLEK LP Jonesboro, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. It's now time for Community Conversations, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place, while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday to you. You're tuned in to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. My very special guest is not in the studio with me. She is on the phone. I have Dr. Veda Pendleton, PH.D., and she is the author of a book that is going to be released, or that's already released. She will be doing a book signing very soon in Jonesboro. The name of the book is called Prepped. And so I'm going to read a brief bio of Dr. Pendleton, and we're going to bring her in to share more about the story behind the book. Good morning. First, I want to say good morning to you, Dr. Pendleton.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, and I can't wait to meet you in person one day to talk more about your book and just your life in general. But I want to first give our listeners and viewers this introduction of you. Veda Pendleton has made Louisville, Kentucky her home since 2006, an educator with a long work history in higher education. She began her teaching in public schools in Little Rock, Arkansas, and became a teacher-educator while pursuing her doctorate at the University of Georgia. She is an avid reader, a prolific writer, and in addition to her books, she has contributed articles to academic journals, local magazines, newsletters, newspapers, and blogs. Perhaps her most important work was rearing her 5 children to adulthood and spending time with her 7 grandchildren. Prepped, a memoir, coming of age in Black and White America, is her 5th book and addresses issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Set in the early 1970s, Prepped chronicles her journey from the newly integrated public schools in the Deep South to an elite all-girls school in Simsbury, Connecticut. Veda's story is unique, and she tells it like it was as she faced the challenges of growing up in a foreign place with unfamiliar faces. Wow. That alone, I can't even imagine going to an all-girls school in the 1970s and what that was like. We're definitely going to get into those questions, so anything you would like to share before we get right into our questions?
Well, I'll just share that some stories find you.
Okay.
And I knew that story was inside. I didn't know until 2017 that I really needed to share it. And so that's how this book came about.
Oh, wow. That's absolutely wonderful. And so that leads us to our first question is, why did you write Prepped? And then how did you get that name?
Well, excuse me. I actually called a friend to express condolences for his mother's passing. And during our conversation, he continued to talk about the gifted and talented Black students in Pine Bluff, Arkansas in the 1970s, and how we were treated. And he was curious about my experience at prep school.
Okay.
And I thought, I have not told that story.
Oh, wow.
Nobody knows what happened when I went there. And most people don't even know how I got there or what that process was like or why I wanted to go. So I wrote the story just to share.
Okay, that is absolutely awesome. All right, and so even this is about an all-girls school, your experience in all-girls school. So who is your potential audience for this book?
Well, there are several. One of my reviewers initially wanted me to kind of pigeonhole it and say, well, if it's just for your friends, it's just for your family. But the message in it is more universal because it truly addresses issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout my lifetime. And so it is for young adults who would be interested in learning about an all-girls experience. But it's also about exploring the emotional, social, and cultural differences and struggles that teenage girls have and that human beings have in general. A lot of my readers have not been teenage girls.
Okay.
A lot of my readers have been more mature people and people who can identify with the struggle of the aftermath of the civil rights movement, because we didn't talk about what happened. We knew that things happened, but nobody really talked about those things and how they impacted everyone's life and life into the future. And so my audience is not only young adult girls, but it is adults who are open to exploring diversity, equity, and inclusion in their own lives.
Oh, wow. Okay. And this is a side question. This, we could definitely talk about this another time, because you said people really didn't talk about the impact the civil rights movement had on their lives and what transpired after that. Do you feel that we, or those that actually went through it and that are old enough to know some of the aftermath, need to really start having these conversations with the younger generation so they can understand what the fight and the revolution is all about and why they need to continue on and not give up?
Well, yes, and the understanding that is also that because the laws changed, hearts did not change.
Okay.
And so that has continued to be the struggle, that hearts have not changed. If you change a man's heart or a woman's heart, then the actions will follow. And many hearts were not changed, and we're still struggling with that, especially in education.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, I'm going to get back on track because I want to make sure we're getting as much information about the book so the listeners can be more excited to go pick this book up and to read your story and hopefully get to meet you when you do your book signing. All right. So the next question is, you tell some difficult stories in your book. How painful was it for you to recount those stories?
It was quite painful. There were times as I wrote that tears came to my eyes because of some of the situations that occurred. So it was extremely painful. I talked to a dear friend who's in the book about some of the things that happened, and as I even spoke to her, it was still painful just to explore some of the things that we had that happened. And that was over 45 years ago.
Oh,
so
wow.
It had a tremendous impact on my life.
Oh, wow. And with that being said, would you recommend individuals who have experienced some traumatic events in their life, even if they don't publish it, they need to at least start writing them down and getting them out of their heart and their head and out of their spirit, just to try to start the healing process?
Well, kind of as a way to cleanse themselves, yes. And at least, talk to somebody if you need to, because sometimes we need to, this is a sidebar, an extra for today, sometimes we need mental health assistance in order to process some of the things that we endure. Oh,
wow. All right. I hope everyone out there is listening. Mental health care is necessary. All right. And as an addendum to that question, because you share some personal hurtful stories, have you ever talked to someone or any of the people that have actually hurt you at the prep school, or have you ever talked to them?
I only told one person of the people in there who caused me pain. I only told one person, and it was devastating for her to hear or to read about the pain that she caused. And she has not been able, because she's an older white woman, she has not been able to recover from the fact that I shared that.
Oh, wow. But has it maybe made her become more aware of, I guess, her surroundings and others around her that she may have some influence over, and maybe have conversations with people to say, okay, we need to change the way we think and feel and do certain things?
Well, perhaps it would if she were not in denial about it.
Okay.
And if she didn't already think that she was woke.
Okay, I understand. I, I totally understand. Okay. So also throughout Prep, you address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as culturally responsive teaching. How necessary was addressing those issues in telling your story?
Well, I say on the cover of the book that this is the book that I wanted to read as a teenager.
Oh.
I didn't read books in prep school or in the public schools in Pine Bluff in junior high where there was a black female protagonist.
Okay.
Books that were assigned to us were always about young white boys and their pursuits and how great they were. And in my mind, I wanted to find the stories that were about young black girls and their stories, because aren't we great too?
That's right.
Don't we have stories to tell? Aren't our stories equally important and valuable and interesting? And that's why I wanted to share this, because here's a resource that schools can use in their classes in helping African American students and in helping all students, because white students also need to understand that there's a struggle out here that you don't even see, that you're not even aware exists, and yet it's going on, and by that invoke empathy for the students who sit beside you in class. And it's important for that reason. And I'll share, too, that I launched my book at the Ethel Walker School, which is a school that I attended, and they have adopted my book for 2 of their classes for next semester.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I thought it was awesome that they would do that.
And we hope that your book gets in more and more hands in more schools and institutions, and this story continues on. And hopefully this will inspire, encourage, and empower others to share their stories, albeit painful. It's necessary sometimes to share these stories so that our young black girls can realize there are women who look like they have it all put together, but there was a struggle. There was some hurdles. There was some things you had to go through to get there.
Yes, there were.
All right. And so in your bio, it mentions that you lived in Pine Bluff and then you went to school in Connecticut. So why was it important for you to tell your story about living in 2 worlds? And what did you want the readers to know about? I'm sorry, what do you want readers to know and how to understand about your life in Pine Bluff, your home life in Pine Bluff?
Well, one of the things that it was important for me to point out in my book is that my preparation began before I went to prep school.
Okay.
It's prepped coming of age in black and white America. My black America was in Pine Bluff with my black community that embraced and loved me and valued me and saw my gifts and talents and nurtured them before I ever considered going to prep school. Okay. There were things that black families did for children in those days, like piano lessons. Oh, okay. Most people don't think about that these days, but music is a gift to a child. And that was, it was not, rather it was common for black students in those days to take piano lessons. We knew who the piano teachers were, and we took piano lessons. That was something that prepared me in a lot of different ways, not only in reading music, but in something as simple as learning fractions.
Oh, wow.
Increasing my vocabulary. Those were things that enriched me as a human being, that prepared me before I went away to prep school. So I was prepared in both worlds because there was a community that surrounded me, and especially St. Paul Baptist Church in Pine Bluff, that surrounded me and embraced me. The expectation for me as a child, from my community and from my family, was that I would have gifts and I would be able to use those gifts. Unlike sometimes in white communities where you're doubted because of your skin color, and doubted as if your body is unable to contain God-given gifts.
Wow.
Simply because of your skin color. But I wanted readers to understand that, hey, the people in Pine Bluff, the black people in Pine Bluff did something for me before I went to prep school. So I was prepared there to go to the prep school.
That's amazing. I hope everyone that is listening and watching on our Facebook Live feed, takes these messages to heart and start to, try to start to think about how we can instill more values into our children in other ways, especially through music, the arts, and other areas that is going to help enrich their lives and put them in places where they're not fighting and begging for positions. They can walk into a place and own it, own the space that they're in.
Yes.
All right. So I want to ask these other questions, and this is a 3-part question. What's your message to teen girls, your message to parents about teen girls, and your message to educators and administrators who educate teen girls?
Okay. My first response, what's my message to teen girls?
Mm-hmm.
The first part of that message is you are enough.
Oh, okay.
No matter where you are or what you're doing, you are enough. But not only are you enough, you have talents and gifts on the inside of you that have not yet been discovered.
Oh.
Find out what those gifts are, because the gifts won't leave you no matter where you are, what you do. The gift will remain with you, but nurture that gift.
Okay.
So that you can become all that you were meant to become and fulfill your purpose.
Okay.
My message to parents would be to help to nurture the gift in your daughter or in your child so that they can grow and develop in the way that they were meant to grow and become all they were meant to be. And my message to educators is to look beyond the packaging that comes into your classroom and look for the gift that's on the inside of the package. The least important part, when we receive a gift, and we're all going to receive gifts in the next few days, when we receive a gift, the packaging is the least important part.
Okay.
What's on the inside, the actual gift, is what we take and use and help it fulfill its purpose.
Okay.
And so look beyond the packaging.
All right, then. Well, I know I have quite a few more questions, and we're winding down on our time. I want to say good morning to Miss Christy Mathis Conway, who says, yes, ma'am, you are enough. So that, I guess that was in response to what you would say to young girls, to teen girls. And she works closely with the youth department in her church. So I'm sure she shares messages like that all the time.
Look, I know Christy from way back.
Okay.
So, hey, Christy.
Okay. Well, since we are, running shorter on time, I want to ask, hopefully we can get these 2 questions in. One is, how beneficial is a single gender living environment like the Ethel Walker School?
Well, I would say it's very valuable. The research already shows that girls thrive and become leaders through single gender education.
Oh, okay.
And keep in mind that if there's a person who's number 1 in the class, it's going to be a girl.
Okay.
You're going to have leaders at the school, they're going to be girls. And they're going to be people doing all sorts of things. And what it did for me is it gave me a worldview that the world is my oyster. And I get to go out and mine it for whatever I want to do. Someone asked me a few years ago, I was in a movie and I had art that was in a juried art show, and they said, well, why are you doing these things? I said, because I can, because I'm interested, because I'd like to do that, and why not?
Okay.
And sometimes we pigeonhole females and say, well, a female is supposed to do this, this, and this. Well, a female is supposed to do what she is called to do in fulfilling her purpose and using her gifts in service to others.
Okay.
That's what a female is supposed to do.
All right.
And it may not look like what we normally think it looks like, but you're supposed to fulfill your calling.
All righty. Amen to that. All right. Miss Christie has another comment. She says, Dr. Veda Pendleton is such an inspiration and has been for many years. She's been the same educated and strong woman that I met many years ago at ASU when her and Chris were dating. That's awesome. Awesome testimony.
But we go way back. So.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're getting ready to wrap up. So in our final moments, I apologize we didn't get to all the questions, but please let people know when and where you're going to be, when they can meet you, when the book is released, all that good stuff. You have about 45 seconds.
Okay. The book signing tomorrow in Jonesboro is at Fat City. It's at 9 o'clock, 9 to 10:30. I have a second book signing in Little Rock at Allison Presbyterian Church, 922 Wright Avenue at 2 o'clock. So if you're not in Jonesboro, but you happen to be in Little Rock, stop by in Little Rock and we'll have a good time. We're going to have a good time in Jonesboro. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone, especially my family who's there. Can I give a shout out to my family?
We have 5 seconds.
David McLean and his family.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Veda. Thank you, everyone. Have a great and blessed day.
You're listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM. We'll be right back.
How do you react to prickly people who hiss at you, irritate you, and sometimes